What is going on with Christians? That we're always so miserable. That we're always walking around with our heads down. Like we're always walking around with such a weight on our shoulders. It was never meant to be like that. It was never supposed to be like that. But yet, in my own journey with God, I realized that as soon as life is hard, we start to crumble. So it's almost we've bought into the lie that Jesus is going to do everything for us. Right? That he's going to wave a magic wand and everything is going to change. But I don't see that in the scriptures. I don't see that in the scriptures. I don't see that in the lives of men and women of God throughout the ages who've had it easy, right? No one ever has. But I think it's because of, maybe it's some of the Christian experiences that we've had, where we feel like, well, all I need to do is just become a follower of Jesus and everything falls into place in my life. In fact, it could be the opposite. It could well be the opposite. But I think what we tend to miss out is that this Christian life is supposed to be a big, grand adventure. It's supposed to be something that we discover more and more of. It's supposed to be something that excites us. It's supposed to be challenging, because that's when we grow. You know, and I look at our culture and I see the fascination that people have of what's out there. You know, I mean, that's what I said in my message yesterday to the group, right? This fascination about UFOs and extraterrestrials and aliens. And quite frankly, I don't blame them. Because they don't see anything supernatural around them. They're going to look elsewhere. And it's very natural to look up. It's very natural to look up in the sky and wonder, maybe there is something out there. It's not unnatural. I mean, if I stand on Temple Mountain, who's been to Temple Mountain? Right at the top. And you look at the vastness of the ocean, there's that sense in you as a human being, like you want to go and see what's there. There's something pulling you towards those spaces, right? There's something pulling us towards those things, and so it is in us to want to explore the unknown. It really is. I don't blame people for that. In fact, Hollywood has also brought on to that. I mean, ever since Spielberg, I think in the 70s, he's been directing movies for 50 years, right? But he's always had this fascination about aliens and UFOs and extraterrestrials. His movie in the 70s, who's watched Close Encounters with the Third Kind? Anyone? Yes, right? This is way back in the 70s. And then he continued to make movies like that. War of the Worlds, and a few others. And then in the 80s, late 70s, obviously there was a movie Alien, right? And then you've got Independence Day and all that. So there's this innate desire in people that, man, because I don't see anything supernatural here, like I want to look out there. You know, and so people are fascinated by it. And some people, you know, they say, well, we've been abducted and this and that. People seem to have recorded stuff in the sky, but we don't really know that to be true. So we don't want to go down that route. But this fascination never stops. It never stops. In fact, Spielberg, at the ripe old age, I think he's probably late 70s at least, if not hitting on 80. But his latest movie, coming out this June, is called Disclosure Day. Right? It's called Disclosure Day. And you can see the trailer for it. Right? And it's basically, the premise of the movie is, finally, that which is mysterious. Finally, that which is unknown. Finally, all the aliens that are out there is finally going to be disclosed. And I know you laugh, but here's the strange thing, right? We have someone from out there who disclosed himself down here 2,000 years ago, right? And so because the people who claim to know him, it's not evident that there's anything supernatural in us, people have to keep on looking out there. And that's why Paul's writing of the Christ in Colossians 1 that we've been looking at in the last couple of weeks is so big, and we want you to see that. If you carry on with our text, we are in Colossians 1:17. Today we're looking at from the New American Standard Bible. It says, He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. Let me say that again. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. In other words, He came first, right? So, the first thing that I want to say today is God is not out there. He is not out there, but the way we live as Christians is as if He is still out there, very far removed. When the Bible says, when Paul just said, He is before all things, I mean, He was there before everything, so that means everything came from Him, right? And because everything came from Him, there's this desire for everything to return back to Him. That's why I'm not surprised at people's fascination about the unknown and the supernatural, because there's this innate desire in all of us to return back from where we came from. In fact, that is the Christian journey, is a return home. It's a return home to where we came from. But unfortunately, we have not seen it as that as Christians, and so we're still very confused about what that journey looks like. In fact, we don't want to take that journey. It was up to us. We want to be immediately transported home just like that. In an instant, in a moment. That's why, we can't wait for the rapture. We can't wait for Christ to return. But it's almost like He's saying to us, no. It's a journey home. And that journey is going to be hard. Because I came first and you came from me. And if that journey back to me should be meaningful, that means it must be hard. Because if something is not hard, it is not meaningful. Right? If something comes so easy, you're never going to value it. You're never going to treasure it. And so He is before all things. He is the first. And in Him, everything holds together. And I think the reason why we still live as God is out there is because we've come up with this notion that God is a being just like us. And the problem with that is, as soon as you see God as a being or as a person, it means that a person or a being had a start somewhere. But we know that God does not have a start. Right? So He's not a being like us. In fact, I love what some theologians say, is that He is not a being. He is the very ground of being itself. Because as soon as you see someone as a being, you see someone as like a person. So you start to create something in your mind called dualism, right? So dualism is helpful to navigate life, right? If not, we're all going to bump into each other, right? If I don't see you separate from me, I'm going to keep bumping into you, right? If this microphone is separate from me, so is this chair, right? So is the building and the tree. So dualism is helpful to navigate life, but it's not helpful to connect with the things that are eternal, friends. And so that's what I want to say. God is not out there. Paul just said, in Him, everything exists. In Him. In Him. Let us just sink in for a moment. In fact, Paul captures this in Acts 17:28. He speaks to the philosophers of the day, right? He's trying to represent Christ. And he says to them, for in Him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are His offspring. So in other words, he's saying, you guys, you are not even Christians. You are philosophers of the day, but yet in you, you are actually saying things that are true. In fact, that very first line, for in Him we live and move and have our being, he is quoting one of the Epicurean philosophers of the day. Here's what I'm trying to say, is that every person is searching for God. Every person has a desire for the unknown because there's something mysterious about it. This is the reason why, let me get a little bit personal for some people. This is the reason why so many sons and daughters who've never known their biological father have a desperate craving to go to know them. Because there's that always emptiness, right? I came from someone. I want to see that person who made me. Right? And there's so many kids who never ever get that. And that's why the most devastating brokenness that a child can ever experience is a disconnect from their father. You see what's going on there? That's the fascination of the unknown, the mysterious. And Paul is trying to say, man, you guys, this fascination you have for the unknown, I'm quoting you guys here, by the way. Let me tell you who that unknown is. In fact, in the very same text, right? He says, some of you say, to the unknown God. Let me tell you who that is. Because to me, he's no longer unknown. To me, he's no longer a mystery. To me, he's no longer someone that I have to search for. Why? Because he came to search for me. So the search is over, friends. Like, we need to stop as if we are searching. Right? So that people will stop actually looking for UFOs and extraterrestrials and start looking at us. I mean, I have a fascination for UFOs, but not unidentified flying objects, but often it's unidentified fried objects. You know, like if I'm going to taste foods of different cultures, I'm like, that's a UFO. It's an unidentified fried object. You know, should I eat it or not? You know, but jokes aside, man, it's the mystery of God is no longer a mystery. It was a mystery once, but it's not anymore because it's now in you and it is in me. And so it's a journey that we all need to take. But we act as if, and I think here's the thing, right? When we separate God from everything, when we act as if He's just a being, that means that He's somewhere, but it's almost as if you are in this big corporate organization, you're on the 20th floor, and God is the CEO, and He lives in the 100th floor, right? So it's a long way from the 20th floor to the 100th floor, and somehow you've got to make your way up there. See, that's a problem when we make God as a being, and Paul's saying, no, everything is created what? In Him. Everything is in Him, right? Everything. And that changes the ball game. And then he carries on in verse 18 of our text. Thanks, very good. And then he says, and when it comes to the church, he organizes it and holds it together like a head does a body, right? So now he's shifting gears. He's like, I've spoken about Him who is first. I've spoken about Him about from which everything comes. I've spoken about Him which everything is in. But now I want to speak to Him as the head of the church. Why this shift? And is there a connection? Why this sudden shift? And is there a connection? Well, think about the head of the church, right? What does the head do? So when he says he's the head of the church like the head is of the body, what does your head do for your body? Your head is what manages and directs you, right? I mean, you can chop off your arm and you still can live, you know? You have Nick Vujicic who was born without arms and legs, and he still lives. But you chop off your head, that's it, that's the interview, right? So, what's in here, which is your brain and your mind, the energy field around your brain, right? That is what manages your body, and that's what directs your body. Right? So, when he says that Jesus is the head of the church, he's not just talking about Pulse Church, or North Union up the road, or Church Alive. He's talking about the universal church. Not just the churches that have existed today, but the churches that have existed since 2,000 years ago. He is the head of that church. Do you want to speculate with me what kind of a CV you are required to be the head of that church, 2,000 years old church? Anyone want to apply for the job? Right? I mean, we can't even manage our own lives. Never mind the church. So last month, it was last year, I was like, okay, let me just write down a bit of a CV. Like, what does it require to be the head of the universal church? Just indulge me for a moment. So I wrote it down, and I thought, no, maybe this is what it requires to be the head of the church. So I'm just going to read it. It's not up on the screen. I'm going to read it. I wrote this last year. I said, to be the grand architect, efficient organizer, strong director, deep mind behind the various diverse and complex parts of an organism, it requires, here's what it requires. It requires acute awareness, right? It requires deep sensibilities, right? It requires long foresight, long game. It requires ingenious insight, and the supreme ability here is to collaborate all parts, right? To collaborate all parts into one effective and affective cohesion across all time. Across all time, in every generation, right? In every generation, accomplishing the grand good purposes, right, for the restoration of all humanity without, here's the thing, without compromising the essence of true goodness and righteousness is what is required to be the head of the church. Care to apply for that job? You see, Christ as the head of the church, this is what he does. So if we're not in awe of him right now, it's like we're not seeing it. You know, if we're not in church every Sunday and not wanting to worship that Christ, there is a disconnect between us and that Christ. You know, some people often say, like, when I look at this Christ, it's not like he's become so big that even my problems seem to become small, right? My problems go strangely dim. I mean, that's the kind of what you were trying to communicate to their true worship. It's like, you've had challenges, but you've been distracted by them, whereas as soon as you come back to focus on Christ, it's all of a sudden, everything falls back into perspective. Everything falls back into the right order and where things should be. Right? So this is the Christ we're talking about, and this is the Christ that elders of a church are under shepherds of. You know, so it's that constant thing of, we recognize our role, but we know that there are many things that we cannot accomplish without complete and total surrender and submission to this Christ. So here's where I want to make that connection, because I didn't talk about aliens for no reason, right? And why that connection with the church? See, the Christ who was unseen became the Jesus who is seen. Right? The Christ who is unseen became the Jesus who is seen. And when they came together and when he walked the earth, he came in a body. See, there's a reason why he came in a body, right? He didn't just come as a spirit. So, let me just put it this way. I love this story of this little boy who has this big fish tank, right? And he has this particular one favorite goldfish that he has. And he loves the goldfish. But now he sees that this goldfish is threatened by other bigger and meaner fish in the fish tank. And he wants to do something about it, but what can he do? You know, does he just destroy all the enemies of his favorite goldfish? No, so what does he do? So he goes to his dad and says, is there a way I can help this goldfish? And the dad says, there is one way. You've got to become a fish. And you've got to go into the tank. And you're going to go save your favorite goldfish against all of these attacking fishes. And the son's like, okay, I'm willing to do that. I love my goldfish enough to now become a fish and to go into the tank so I can rescue my favorite goldfish. And the father says, but there's a catch. There's one catch. You've got to remain a fish forever. You've got to remain a fish forever. You cannot come back again and become like us. You see, when Jesus came to rescue us, he came into a body, became a body, and he remains in that body forever. You see, that's part of the price Jesus paid. That's why when he says he is the head of the body, it literally means he can identify with his body, which is you and I. That's the approximation between us and Christ. That's how closely he identifies with us. And you need to hear that this morning. God is not out there. Here's what I want to say. Loretta, please put it up. God is around here. Thank you, my boy. He's not out there. He's around here. That changes the ball game completely, my friends. You see, Jesus takes his church so personally that when Saul was persecuting his church, he goes to Saul and says, "Why are you persecuting me? Why are you persecuting me?" And so what then is the role of this church, friends, to make this mysterious thing known? You see, that's where I want to end today. Loretta, please, next slide, brother. The church must be the reflection of the universe's unseen power, because there is a legitimate curiosity about this unseen power. But this unseen power became flesh and walked amongst us, and now we claim, by the way, we're making a very bold claim. We're saying that this alien who came from out there came to be amongst us, and this alien now lives in me. Right. You know, often you see those alien movies, like the stomach starts to open and out comes up this alien from the stomach. That's like our message, except it's in a nicer way. Except it's like, yeah, there is an alien who lives in me. I've been invaded by a foreign invader and he lives in me, but he's making me better. He's not making me worse. I'm not lying there having some parasite inside me eating me up. I'm actually living with this alien who came inside me, and he's a spirit, and he's making me more and more alive. He's making me more and more human. You see, that unseen power that I was fascinated by, it's God. It's Christ who became the seen Jesus, and he lives in me. And that's why the church is the one, if we are really doing our jobs well, people's curiosity about the unknown out there will start to shift towards the really known around us. That's why Paul says to those philosophers, this unknown God, he no longer remains an unknown God. Because now he lives with those he calls the church, his people, right? And this is why Paul makes this connection in the text between he who was before all things, and in him everything holds together, and now also he's the same one who is the head of the church. You see, that is the role of the church. And when we don't take it seriously, we are like those people in those movies who has this parasite inside of us who's busy killing us, and we're always walking around so heavy laden and burdened and sad, as if we don't have a power in us that can change us. So the universe's unseen power, friends, is no longer a mystery for you and I. And my desire, my hope for us is that we're actually walking that journey home. Right? We're no longer lost. It's not like we don't know where to go. It's not like the great adventurers of the day in the 1800s who, like David Livingstone, who trekked through Africa. He had no GPS, he had no Waze, he had no Google Maps. It was an unknown, mysterious thing. You just got to chop your way through the forest and the trees and the savannah, hoping that you won't be eaten by a lion or a tiger or whatever. But for us, we know the way home, and the way home is Jesus Christ. We know the way home, it's just that we choose to not walk on it. We know the fastest and most direct route to Cape Town is the N1, but instead we choose the detour to go via the N3, and then we go into the little side roads, and no wonder we're confused. Like, when are we ever going to get to Cape Town? That's because we've taken detour after detour after detour. See, this is the Christ. And he's always calling, he's always inviting you to a journey. He's always inviting you to an adventure. And so when we face challenges in life, it's not like, oh, life sucks, why is God not coming through? It's like, man, this is part of the journey, because in this challenge, you're going to get to know more of me, God says. That's the invitation. In this challenge, in this discomfort, in this strenuous season, it's my invitation to really get to know the unseen power. That's the invitation for us. So we shouldn't be surprised if we have challenges. Because do we really think we're going to get to know God if we are in comfort? In fact, I think it's very dangerous if our lives are comfortable all the time. If me, as the king of Israel, I'm not fighting with my men in the front lines, But I'm chilling at home and all of a sudden I see a naked woman bathing. And then you know the rest of the story. Friends, it ain't a good place to be comfortable. But it's the best place when you're facing your challenges head on, because that unseen power that wants to reveal itself to you is revealed itself in those moments. We make those good choices. In those moments, we take one step in front of the other. That's what makes the journey meaningful home, right? We don't just want to get home, it's the journey that's there that's meaningful. And so this is Christ's invitation to us. And so we need to stop navel gazing, we need to stop self-loathing, and embrace the universe's unseen power, which is Christ. Because it's no longer a mystery to us, friends. Stop the notion of, well, I need to figure out. No, you don't need to figure it out. You just need to follow Him. You just need to follow Him. You just need to see Him and embrace Him in those moments. And this unseen power, by the way, when it starts to manifest in your life, that's when people go, oh, then there must be something. That's what draws their curiosity. Man, then they'll no longer be distracted by aliens and UFOs and extraterrestrials and what's out there, because they don't need to go out there anymore. They're like, sure, around here I'm seeing some quote-unquote magic. Right? Around here I'm seeing the church becoming this incredible people, this movement, this force that is making a significant difference in the world. So that's what it is. The question is, are we going to choose that? Because every day it's a choice, friends. It's never automatic. It's never like, yeah, okay, I'm inspired today, and then tomorrow morning. No, your level of inspiration is going to drop as soon as you drive out the gates today. The choice is yours. God is like, man, I'm here. The power is here. You're going to tap in. Are you going to connect? Are you going to choose? We've got to make that choice. It's a daily choice. And boy, I tell you, like, when you're living in that power, there's nothing like it. You won't want anything else. You won't want anything else, because that's what we were made for. That's what we were made for. That's what we were all made for. And when you become that, whew, it's like then you are limitless. There's nothing that you can't do, because it's that power that's at work in you. It's such a great adventure, and I want to say, just enjoy it, embrace it, love it. Because it's through that, it's through those challenges that it's making you fully alive. Man, in our day, comfort is king, and I'm like, sorry, I don't want that. I don't want the takeaways. I want the challenge of making good food. Yeah. Because when I've made good food for an hour or two, that tastes better than popping into the Chinese takeaway with food that's full of MSG. No, I'm serious. Comfort is king in our day. And I'm like, no, not that. I don't want that. Because I've known enough now that in the midst of the challenge I'm experiencing in life, because I'm learning to connect to that unseen power, it's what Christianity is all about at the end of the day. And it's our choice how we live. It's our choice how we experience it. Let me pray for us.